with the CX-90, Mazda's essentially completed its premium transformation. The question now is, with nearly ₱1 million separating this from the CX-9, does the CX-90 represent the absolute best that the Mazda brand has to offer? So the Mazda CX-90 basically competes with the likes of the Hyundai Palisade or even to a certain degree, the Nissan Patrol. Basically, it's covering a lot of bases with other full-size crossover SUVs and body-on-frame SUVs. Now, with the CX-90 being Mazda's flagship, what you get is a very bold exterior design, basically what you've been used to with the brand's Kodo design language. And so what you have here is yun nga, the typical Mazda 5-point grille, which is then flanked by your usual LED headlights. Now you also have two-tone 21-inch wheels for the range-topping exclusive, and you're gonna see here as well a chrome trim for the faux side vent with the inline-6 badging. Now moving towards the side of the Mazda CX-90, you're gonna see here a very clean aesthetic. So there's basically gentle curves here to, highlight the car's very elegant side profile. And then these doors are worth talking about because they're pretty long, ang haba nung kanyang rear doors. And with this chrome trimming down here, you're gonna see here the Mazda script written here, which I think is a very nice touch. Then you're gonna see here the roofline tapers here towards the tailgate. And you're gonna see here wide LED taillights, which pretty much emphasizes the car's width. And then, unlike the CX-60, buti na lang, here in the CX-90, wala kang fake exhausts. Now, basically in terms of the way the CX-90 looks very elegant, very imposing. So with that in mind, let's talk about na ngayon the interior of the Mazda CX-90 to see what Mazda's absolute best can offer to us. So as for the interior of the Mazda CX-90, well, if you've been in the CX-60, this is still pretty much gonna be a similar situation. So it's a very premium interior. You have soft touch materials here on the dash. And for this CX-90 exclusive variant, you also have here a generous amount of ultra suede inserts sa kanyang dashboard and also here in the door panels. Now, apart from the plushness, the spaciousness, let's talk about ngayon the tech here in the Mazda CX-90. So you have here the latest generation Mazda Connect infotainment system, which you can see here in these two screens. So with the main infotainment system, you've pretty much seen naman in the other Mazdas like the CX-60, the Mazda 3, the CX-30, yung itong very minimalist na kanyang operating system. So yeah, the interface is very straightforward, easy to use. Not a lot of people are fans of this rotary knob controller, but as you're gonna notice in my reviews, whether it's Mazda or BMW or basically brands who have pioneered this rotary knob controller layout, I'm a huge fan of this interface because if you're gonna be driving, you know that in 2 clicks, for example, you're gonna be in settings. And then, as for the features of this infotainment, you have of course your 360-degree camera system along with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You of course have a wireless charging pad here. Yun nga lang, I find it narrow and awkwardly placed, but at least you have USB-C charge ports if you're not a fan of the wireless charging. And then, as for the other tech features in this interior, well, you have a Bose sound system, you also have this large panoramic sunroof, and you also have cooled seats, which are again very useful sa ating napaka-init na climate. So with that in mind, let's now go to the car's back seats, which as you're gonna be seeing here, napakaluwag ng space itong Mazda CX-90 here in the second row. So of course, you can move the seats forward and backward here in the CX-90. And then, yun nga, with the seats all the way back, talagang it's really comfortable, really spacious. And these seats, by the way, are really good in terms of their long distance comfort. I also love this permanent center console that you're seeing here, which is of course exclusive to the exclusive variant. And then what you have here is you have center storage here. And actually that's pretty much it in terms of what you can do here. Then you have here your cup holder. and 2 USB-C fast charging ports and your own climate zone at the back of the CX-90. Now, yun nga, in terms of headroom, it's really good. Legroom is also really good. Makakade-4 na ako dito sa likod ng CX-90. So yeah, it's a nice place to lounge here. And let's block the sun with this thing. Yeah. LED lights, it's pretty good. And then, yeah, so nice place to be here at the back of the CX-90. And then let's now transfer to the third row, and I'll show you, by the way, how you enter the third row seats. Try ko lang to. You just pull this lever, and then na basically, as you're gonna be seeing here, ito yung third row situation ng Mazda CX-90. So let's move this seat to... Okay, that's good. So as you're gonna see, in terms of space at the third row of the CX-90, yeah, this is a pretty large car. So in terms of headroom is really good. Actually, headroom is really good. This is my headroom kahit pag nakasandal ako, despite that sloping roofline. Yun nga lang, in terms of legroom, and actually footroom, if I were being honest, it's not that good. The main reason why is because yung seat mechanism, yung railings for the second row are actually eating into the foot space para sa aking left foot. So as a result, I'm gonna be... Para medyo nakaganito ako ng onti as a result. But if the second row passenger, for example, nag-adjust siya ng kanyang second row, yan. Let's say nag-bargain tayo ng space to the second row occupant, you can, I guess, adjust in a way na there's still good enough legroom for the second row passengers while you still have a good amount of legroom here at the rear. Yun nga lang, as you're gonna be seeing here, the seat positioning is pretty low. So yeah, I'm at the position na ang taas ng tuhod ko. So yeah, it's a place that's best left for kids, if I were being honest. And then as for amenities here at the third row, actually, you have amenities here at the back of the CX-90. Yun, you have your aircon vent here and the sides of the seats, and also USB-C fast charging ports on each side of the seats. Of course, you also have your light here, and yeah, that's pretty much it here in the back of the Mazda CX-90. It's a big car, but if I were being honest, in terms of the third row passenger or third row section, medyo hindi reflected yung size niya relative to what's being offered here inside the third row. So that's a good time for us to talk about the cargo space of the Mazda CX-90, which is pretty good for the class. Not the best, but pretty good. And so if you're gonna be folding all of the seats lalo, there's really a lot of space inside the Mazda CX-90, effectively turning this into a sort of a van in terms of that cargo space. So again, that's pretty good. So let's get out of the third row ngayon and hop into the driver's seat, where I'm supposed to be in the first place naman talaga, and let's take a spin of the Mazda CX-90. Now, as for what's lurking under its hood, the Mazda CX-90 gets a turbocharged 3.3-liter inline-6 that is hooked up to a 48-volt mild hybrid system. Now, speaking of that 48-volt system, it actually has a strong enough electric motor that is mounted together with the 8-speed automatic, thus enabling it to be classified as a hybrid. Now, with all of these things out of the way, how does the Mazda CX-90 perform on the open road? So if you've watched our review of the Mazda CX-60 and pretty much basically any other media, well, you've probably noticed that our chief complaint was its 8-speed automatic transmission. So the car uses a multi-plate clutch in order to precisely control the management between the gas engine and the car's electric motor, or at least the small electric motor that's in the Mazda CX-90. Now, one of our chief complaints was actually its jerkiness in low city speeds. Pero actually, while on the move naman, the transmission is actually pretty smooth. And so here, as you're seeing ngayon, there's a sort of gridlock traffic because we're in a busy na parang parking area. Okay. Crawling, stop and go traffic. It's actually pretty good sa totoo lang. Like, transmission actually pretty good. As in, It's not anymore yung may indecisiveness siya. Wala ka na ngayon masyadong ngarag-ngarag na feeling or wala ka na ngayon masyadong jerkiness that you experience whenever crawling, as in yung mga gintong less than 10 kph. So ngayon, let's turn left here. Crawling pa rin. Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Okay, so one of our chief complaints was, for example, yun nga, if you're gonna be in stop-and-go traffic, yung nag-stop-and-go ka, may mga lurching, ganong motions siya. Here, wala na siya. Nawala na yung mga ganong ngarag-ngarag na feeling, especially when you're in stop-and-go traffic, yung stop-and-go ka. It's actually pretty good ngayon. I actually took the car 2 days ago in C5 because I had an event in Bonifacio Global City. And ang lala ng traffic nung panahon na yun, and dun pa lang, I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good. You still feel the shift shocks though, as in meron ka pa rin naramdamang shift shock when the gears do actually change. But I actually don't mind that part, to be honest, because totoo lang, as a car enthusiast, I actually do want to feel sometimes the gear shifts, and hindi man siya like yung as in ang lala, hindi man siya yung parang may jerk. You just feel the gear shifts at this point when you're crawling through traffic, which is, for me, pretty good na rin. The only moments where you will feel the jerkiness or when you will feel the parang ngarag-ngarag na feeling whenever you're crawling is basically kapag yung, for example, yung indecisive yung throttle mo. So, let's say, biglang nag-gas ka, tapos lang magbe-brake ka, tapos biglang mag-gas ka. Actually, no. It's even rare because I just did that now, yung ganong parang indecisive ka sa throttle and the brakes. And it actually managed that indecisiveness from the driver pretty good. So, finally, the main issue we had with the transmission has finally been addressed, mostly at least, with these raft of software updates. Yun nga, shift shocks are still gonna feel it at low speeds, but it's pretty good na. Like, I actually like the mechanical connection from the shift shocks nga because, again, yun nga, I'm a driver enthusiast, I'm a car enthusiast, and I actually do like those sensations. Again, hindi nga siya pangit na shift shock. It's actually a good one because you know how the transmission's working in the background. You have to remember that this car, by the way, is also a 48-volt mild hybrid. Well, to be fair, sa totoo lang, the I-stop in this car, because yun nga, this is a 48-volt mild hybrid, has actually always been pretty smooth. I've never really turned off the feature back before when I had the CX-60. So we're coasting ngayon in this 4-lane road. As you're gonna see here in the gauge cluster, the engine will turn off whenever coasting or decelerating. So that's pretty good for efficiency. And yun nga, it's actually pretty good yung handover na ngayon to the gas engine and the electric motor, the small electric motor in the transmission, whenever cruising at, for example, sa city speeds ng mga 40 to 60 kph. It's actually pretty good na ngayon. Even before, it's good enough naman for me, and even ngayon lalo, it's now become even better. So, it's really boosting the efficiency at this point. And transmission aside, since we've focused so much on the car's transmission, let's talk about the car's other aspects. So, yun nga, it's a very rigid car, itong CX-90, despite being longer, wider, taller than any other Mazda that has come before it. So it's pretty good in the refinement aspect. The ride's on the firm side pa rin though, typical Mazda tuning, but compared to the CX-60, at this pre-update ng suspension niya that you can do at the dealer if you want to, yung suspension ito I think is better dampened because, well, it's a bigger car, bigger body, and even better palalo yung kanyang ride when you fill up this car with 6 more passengers, or in this case, 5 more passengers because this is the 6-seater exclusive version. Yeah, it's on the firm side, but my main concern is, like the Hyundai Santa Fe that I've reviewed a few months ago, this car's large 21-inch wheels, which are pretty heavy and at the same time are using low-profile tires. Now, let's talk about the inline 6 because yun nga, it's a buttery smooth engine. It sounds really nice, so I'm gonna be overtaking a slower car here. And that sounds really good. Now, here's a stoplight, or rather a stop intersection, a 4-way intersection. Let's stop here. How's the I-stop gonna perform? And namatay engine. Let go of the brake. Again, yun nga, like in the previous CX-60, the pre-update to the transmission, it's actually pretty good naman talaga in the first place. So, it's smooth yung kick-in niya ng engine. And even na ngayon lalo, after those raft of software updates, it's actually pretty smooth. So with these updates in mind, let's talk about na ngayon the car's sportiness. So you have to remember that the CX-90 has sort of been designed first and foremost to be a sporty SUV, and so that has left this crossover SUV in some places to be a bit rough on the edges. But yun nga, the software updates to, for example, the transmission, along with the suspension, at least in the CX-60, have made this car much more comfortable, much more refined, and much more polished over the years. And so, how does that feel in the CX-90 in terms of the sportiness? Well, let's downshift a bit as we enter this corner. I still do love the fact that the transmission does do a bit of rev matching whenever you're gonna downshift. Yun nga, this 3-row SUV has no right to be this sporty sa totoo lang. It's a really good 3-row SUV in the sportiness factor. Body control is really good. The suspension is doing a good job of keeping the body roll in check. And itong kanyang steering, which is yun nga on the heavy side, pays dividends with its precision and yung kanyang steering feel out here in these twisty roads. Because yun nga, you're able to really feel what's happening here in the steering wheel. So you're able to point and shoot this car through the corners. So yeah, we're in that part na a 3-row SUV can handle this well to the corners. Corner exit. Yeah, this is a really good 3-row crossover SUV, no? Yun nga lang, of course, you have to remember, this car's on the heavy side din as well. So it's a good thing that the steering is on the heavy side din. So you're always reminded that this car, though magandang body control nga niya, is not supposed to be flinged around in such a way na parang, you know, you're driving a Mazda MX-5 for instance. And so out here in the highway naman, the Mazda CX-90 feels perfectly at home in these speeds. Once again, yun nga, the suspension is still on the firm side, but it's actually doing a good job, I think, of filtering out the road imperfections, lalo na in particular yung mga wavy na mga undulations ng NLEX. And because of that firmer damping, as a result, wala ka masyadong body motions, wala ka masyadong extra movements kung sabihin natin, and so therefore, the ride becomes much more stable. Now, as for the rest of the structure, the car feels very rigid despite being a very large car. Because yun nga, pag malaking kotse, they tend to be less rigid than their smaller counterparts because syempre longer steel, longer metal to use. And so therefore, mas prone to flexing and whatnot. But here in the CX-90, it still feels very good. Of course, you pretty much expect the CX-90 to feel very planted at these speeds and out here on the highway. So talagang no wonder then that this car is really quite popular in the United States because talagang the development philosophy around this car has been really centered around the American consumer, wherein their roads are, you know, yung mga driving speeds that are 75 miles per hour at the most in some states. And so therefore, pagdating sa Pilipinas, yung speed na yun is, again, parang mani na lang siya at this point. Now, as for fuel economy, it's a good time lang to talk about the car's fuel economy because, yun nga, having mentioned that this is a 3.3-liter inline-6, 48-volt mild hybrid, it is actually pretty good. Though, again, pretty good relative to the performance it offers and the sheer size of this vehicle because we're currently doing 8.2 kilometers per liter and in the city, kasi I've driven this car na rin in Manila when I went to a Hyundai Thanksgiving party event. Because of the mild hybrid system, it's actually really helping the car become much more fuel efficient despite being this powerful beast that you're driving in out there in the highway. And so in congested traffic, it's actually doing mga 5 to 7 kilometers per liter. So considering yung lala ng traffic sa Metro Manila, it's actually a pretty good number. Relative to the Hyundai Santa Fe, the Calligraphy 2.5 turbo variant, they're actually on the same level yung coaching yon and itong Mazda CX-90 despite having a bigger 3.3-liter inline-6 and of course much more power as a result. Finally, let's talk about the advanced driver assistance systems because syempre at this price point, you pretty much expect the CX-90 to be fully loaded at this point. So yun nga, you have the use of automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, lane keeping assist, the adaptive cruise control na yun nga lang doesn't work in stop-and-go traffic. And then you have blind spot warning, rear cross traffic alert, and lane keeping assist. So it's a pretty fully loaded car except lang for the stop-and-go function adaptive cruise control. I'm not sure kung bakit nga ba ganun in the Philippine market because in other markets naman, the CX-90 and the CX-60 or practically every Mazda has that feature. But yeah, nevertheless, it's a fully loaded car, itong CX-90. And it's a 3-row SUV that's really putting driving pleasure at the forefront. At least in terms of sportiness, in terms of handling, in terms of those aspects, the Mazda CX-90 is pretty much a sports car in the 3-row crossover SUV segment. So the Mazda CX-90 starts at a little under 3.7 million pesos, while the range-topping all-wheel drive exclusive on the other hand starts at a little under 3.8 million pesos. So, does the Mazda CX-90 offer the absolute best that the brand has to offer? Well, if you're looking for a luxurious 3-row SUV that can carry the entire family whilst having fun behind the wheel, albeit with a bit of sacrifice in terms of ride quality, then the CX-90 is indeed Mazda's absolute best. Basically, the CX-90 is a crossover SUV that only a brand like Mazda can make.